Hello and welcome to this FPL Top Tips for Success video with me, Holly Shand. In this video I'll be sharing with you my top tips for success which have allowed me to gain 6 top 100k finishes in the last 8 seasons, with 2 of those being in the top 10k. If you are new around here, please give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. Let's get into it. My first tip is to find the balance of big hitters in your team. Now, traditionally, we've been able to start the season with 3 big hitters. However, this year we need to take note of the fact that the fullbacks have changed the game. We now need to make sure that we've got a good balance of premium defenders as we have premium attackers. So I would look for having 5 premium players across your squad, preferably with 2 premium defenders and 3 premium attackers, or 3 premium defenders and 2 premium attackers, because if you get any more than that, then you're going to find that you're too inflexible in terms of your transfers and you've got players in your starting 11 who are only really worthy of having a position on your bench. Tip number 2 is to make a captaincy matrix. We need to make sure over the opening weeks of the season that we have a good captain candidate for every single game week. And it may be, if you're looking to build a team with just 2 premium attackers out of the 5 on offer from the 3 clubs, that if you build a captain matrix, then you'll have a good idea of which options you want to cover on a game week by game week basis. And this may help you to decide which premiums to start the season with. We've got some big decisions to make. Obviously, we've got Mo Salah at Liverpool, but then do we go with a Spurs attacker or a Man City attacker? And then from Spurs, do we go Kane or Son? And from Man City, do we go with Haaland or Kevin De Bruyne? Game week 3, 4 and 6 certainly look like interesting propositions with a number of options on the table. Tip 3 is one of a more general one for when the season is underway, which is the timing of those transfers. We tend to see that we get a full picture in terms of availability on a Friday evening before a Saturday deadline or even a Friday night deadline. So I'd urge you to only make transfers on a Friday afternoon UK time if you can. Now, one exception to this rule would be in the early game weeks of the season, particularly if you use all of the 100 million budget in game week 1, because you may find that once a player has gone up or down by 0.1, you may get priced out of moves very quickly. And given we've got unlimited transfers this season coming at the World Cup, it's quite important to build up team value during the opening game weeks of the season. So that's just something to keep an eye on. But in general, I would try and make transfers as late as possible to use the maximum amount of information, because lots can change in terms of injuries and suspensions throughout a game week ahead of the next game week. My 4th tip is to consider defensive formations. We've seen traditionally 3-4-3 and 3-5-2 have been the go-to fantasy formations, but when you look at the top performing players from the 21-22 season, there's a lot of defenders that have certainly outscored forwards and a lot of midfielders. So I think it's perfectly fine to go with a 4-4-2, a 4-5-1 or a 5-4-1. So don't be scared to start with a different formation than you would have previously done, because you look at the value that you can get out of the likes of Trent Alexander-Arnold and João Cancelo, the consistency you can get from those players in those big 6 clubs. I think it's really important to make sure that you've got a good balance of them in your team. My next tip is to try and have a good first substitute. It's tempting to spend all of the budget on your starting 11, but things do change quite quickly in FPL. We saw a lot of, disruption last season. Hopefully we won't get the same level of disruption this season, but certainly things can happen in terms of illness, poor weather, that can mean that maybe you will need a player coming off your bench. Now, it is slim pickings. However, I do think there's some okay options in the 4.5 million midfielder bracket and in the 4 and 4.5 million defender bracket. So try and spend an extra 0.5 if you can on your 5th midfielder or your 5th defender. If you're going 4 at the back or 4 in midfield, it's a bit more difficult when we get to the forwards at 4.5 million, so it's probably not possible to have a starter there on your bench, but certainly that last defender or midfield spot, pay attention to it, because you never know when you may need to use them. My next tip is to be cautious with players who are new to the Premier League, either because they've arrived from the promoted side or because they're new players to the Premier League. Premier League has very different demands to some European leagues, and we often see the vast majority of players that come over to England take a little bit of time to adjust to the demands of the league, the pace, the physicality. And likewise with the promoted teams, there is a bit of a gulf in quality between the Championship and the Premier League in the UK, and we do see some promoted sides struggle from the start, and particularly this season when you look at the poor fixtures that Fulham and Bournemouth have got over the opening few game weeks. I think you can put all of their assets that you've maybe been scouting last season on the watch list and wait for the fixtures to improve before bringing them into your fantasy squad. My final tip is to always consider the balance between form and fixtures. A lot of managers learnt this a difficult way last season when we had a lot of double game weeks. It wasn't always the players that had 2 fixtures that succeeded over those that had 1, and it's very much a case of a good player with good underlying numbers and form will outscore a player with no underlying numbers but good fixtures. Form has to win out over fixtures for me. I'm very much a form manager. If I can see a player in form with good underlying numbers, then I'm more likely to stick with them through thick and thin, even if the fixtures are mixed, instead of jumping ship for a player with good fixtures that may ultimately disappoint me. This is a bit of a different video from me today, so I hope you found it useful. If you did, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and make sure you are in my mini league. The league code is on your screen now, and you can find the link in the description to auto join, and you'll also find discount for Fantasy Football Hub on there, and also the link to my Rate My Team service and Discord channel if you're interested. Thanks very much for watching. I'll be back with another video very soon. Bye for now.